This is Replica, written by Craig A. Falconer, narrated by Alex Freeman. Introductory quote. For greed, all nature is too little. Seneca. Chapter 1. This day will go down in history. Of course, no one is going to know about everything we're doing up here. But the scientific breakthrough I announce publicly in a few hours will be enough to change the world forever. The nature of my return to Earth will grab everyone's focus, and the quantum leap in technology it showcases will blow their minds. I'm sure they'll think it's some kind of trick at first, at least until I start talking about the true power of what my team has unlocked. From then, they'll be speechless. I can picture the headlines now, even bigger and bolder than when I leaked out some info about my plans for buying this station in the first place. Lenny delivers on teleportation, they'll say. Power, prestige, possibility. Lenny's 3P changes the game. Okay, the second one is a stretch. I've not totally given up on trying to get the world to think of it as 3P technology, precise portal portation. But the word teleportation is so deeply rooted in people's minds that it does feel like a losing battle. But the real battle is much bigger than that. It doesn't matter what anyone calls it. We're doing it. The portal technology is real and it's ready for prime time. The only reason we haven't shown it off yet is that our quest for 3P. Hell, okay, I'll just call it teleportation. Led us to something else. Something even bigger. Of all the happy accidents we could have imagined, this one takes the cake. I'm not going to divulge the nature of the accident publicly, but I'm sure as hell going to get rich from it. In fact, I'd say I'm not going to divulge the accident because of how rich it's going to make me. The whole idea of teleportation is to move an object from one place to another, without the usual travel time it would take to physically move it across the space between them. We're all familiar with that. You put something in one pod, which we call a portal, you press a few buttons and twist a few dials, and it disappears from the first portal, only to instantly appear in another. Our systems don't actually have all the dials and buttons you might be imagining, or that you'd see in a kid's cartoon about a teleportation device. Just like a time machine wouldn't actually have a dial for selecting the date. But it's only really the physical interface that differs from what you might expect. Because my staff's computer programs do have control sliders and destination selection screens. Ever since we first got the portals working, we've been able to choose which of them we transport something into. And don't worry, if I hadn't funded the final development and seen the trial and error that brought us to that point, I'd probably think this all sounds like magic too. But the happy accident? Okay, I'm getting there. That came just 3 days ago. We were experimenting with fragile objects like glass panes and highly brittle plastics to make sure that teleportation would be non-destructive even for things like that. At the time, we were playing around with a few of the variables, but I'll gladly admit that the details are beyond me. I pay very well to employ people who understand this a lot better than I do. Anyway, my staff used to talk about a so-called dissolution rate, and we found that the lower we made it, the shorter the distance we could successfully transport any given object. If we went too low, it wouldn't transport at all. And for the most fragile objects like our orange-colored panes of glass, no dissolution rate had proven low enough and no distance had proven short enough for delivering anything but shattered pieces. We were slowly finding the sweet spots for different objects across different distances. But eventually we realized that there wasn't going to be any way to transport fragile objects across any meaningful range without packing them safely beforehand. Just like you'd have to pack them for old-fashioned transport. That's hardly a major hardship, and I was just glad that we discovered it with glass rather than diamonds. But my head researcher Laura Morgan has an undying drive to find solutions, and I rightly figured that she wasn't going to give up on the smaller details just yet. Since then, though, I've become a lot more glad of something a lot more important. Something Morgan found along the way. Because in that debatably necessary search for a way to teleport unpackaged glass across reasonable distances without damaging it, we unlocked the key to something else. Something I'd never even dreamed was possible. Chapter 2. The call came in the middle of the night. A teleportation trial using a new combination of variables had just produced a highly unexpected result, my assistant researcher reported. His name is Carlo, and even though he's never been to Europe in his life, I swear he's the most Italian guy you could imagine. Boss, he said, you gotta get up here. We're both looking at this, but we need someone else to tell us we're not crazy. I can't even believe what just happened. He didn't sound alarmed. He sounded a lot of things. Shocked, excited, uncertain. But he didn't sound alarmed. I jumped into my clothes and ran up to see them. When Carlo invited me to join him up here meant in his lab, which, unlike my comfortable bunk, is on the lunar surface. If you didn't already know, I guess I could have mentioned earlier that I own an old international research station here on the moon. I picked up the station for a steal when the consortium was going out of business, and since then I've converted it into a home for all of the amazing research that's coming out of my other major purchase, Portal Core. Some people might say I haven't done all that much. I didn't build the station. I didn't build the company. I didn't invent the tech. But who put it all together? Who saw potential in a station everyone else saw as a burden? Best of all, who was about to take Portal Core to a level that even its visionary founder didn't see coming? I'll give you one guess. That's right. Yours truly, Sebastian Lenny. When Carlo called that night, I knew it had to be something big. While we've been working on the final stages for the belated grand announcement that we've mastered teleportation, there have only been 3 people here. There's Carlo, there's me, and of course, there's Morgan. I did put all of this together, but there would have been nothing to put together if it wasn't for Laura Morgan. Most of the groundwork for the teleportation tech was in place when I bought out her founder's stake in Portal Core. Morgan is a stone-cold genius, but she was fed up hitting one brick wall after another with all of the regulatory crap you have to deal with on Earth when you want to dive into any dangerous research like the type we're doing here. I've always felt at home in space, and Morgan was quick enough to join me when she realized the shackles would be off. Everyone knows that my money came from space mining, and until the Portal Core deal, I'd never invested much in anything that wasn't directly related to space. So yeah, I can understand why it raised a lot of eyebrows when I spent so much of my fortune to acquire Portal Core. But to my mind, it made all the sense in the world. The ability to research this kind of stuff without regulators shutting everything down is priceless in itself. But everyone was missing the obvious reason I was interested in Morgan's work to begin with. It's as simple gets. If you're mining in space, what could be better than instantaneous transport for your equipment, your staff, and eventually your haul of rare materials? It's perfect. I knew that once the tech was stable, all we'd need to do was bring one of the incredible portals to any given asteroid mining site, and then we'd be able to transfer whatever we wanted between there and Earth. It seemed like a no-brainer. One that would let me expand the business tenfold by cutting down on all the wasted time that comes with long-distance travel. That's the line I've stuck to in public, but there was more to it than that. Even before we stumbled on our happy little accident. You see, Laura Morgan, who founded Portal Core when she was still in college, is the most ambitious person I've ever met. She's driven by discovery and the goal of achieving her full potential too, which first helped me by making sure I got a pretty good deal, and secondly helped me by making her want to come and work in an isolated research base on the moon, even though she has enough money to retire for life in the damn Bahamas. Anyway, before the buyout, I'd spoken to her a few times at tech showcases and industry events, and I knew she had bigger goals than any she'd shared in public. The one that always interested me was her dream of teleporting matter not just from one constructed portal to another, but from one constructed portal to any chosen point in space. That would mean, if it ever worked, We could transport machinery or staff to new mining sites we hadn't yet reached by conventional transport. I mean, I guess it would also unlock the potential of space travel way more broadly than that, but that's my interest in this game. Any new asteroid where we discover something of value? Boom, deliver a crew to extract it and bring it all back. No messing around, just get in, get out, get rich. So yeah, don't tell anyone yet, but we've already cracked the code for teleporting items from one of our portals to any chosen open-air location within a short distance. No need for a second portal. No need for a physical access route to the destination. No need for me to explain just how much potential there is for this discovery, surely. We're already working on increasing that distance, which Morgan tells me is the easy part. And when I say open air, that so far means the recirculated air within our dome-based research lab, since one slight drawback of the moon is that everywhere outside does kind of have a chronic lack of oxygen. When I got to the lab to see what was going on, Morgan was standing beside Carlo. She looked less excited and more hesitant than him, but I still didn't see fear. Whatever had happened, I knew there hadn't been a full-blown disaster. "What's going on?" I asked her, naturally directing the question to the organ grinder. Carlo, as solid a worker as he might be, is an intellectual monkey compared to Laura Morgan. He'll do what he's told and he'll do it damn well, but Morgan has insight. Crucially, they're both bound by various rock-solid non-disclosure agreements, including one relating to anything that could harm my company's reputation and thus its value. Whatever they'd seen, I was confident it would stay between us unless I decided to bring it to light. "Something unexpected happened," Morgan told me. She was standing straight as an arrow, like always, and the absolute blackness of her equally straight hair provided a stark contrast to her paler-than-ever face. I remember gulping at that point, thinking it was going to be some pretty damn bad news. "I feel like you're not going to tell me that we've slightly extended the range of portal-to-air transport," I said, trying to lighten the mood with a chuckle. "Or that you found a genuine sweet spot for fragile items after all." Without answering, Morgan walked over to the origin portal next to her control desk. She opened it and showed me a perfectly square pane of orange glass. Orange was the thinnest we had, and I knew we only had one pane left since the rest had shattered in various experiments. "Did you manage to teleport this without protective packing?" I asked, wondering what was going on and still doubtful that Carlo would have gotten me out of bed for something like that, or that Morgan would look so unusually hesitant about it. To my surprise, she nodded. I couldn't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed, especially since Carlo had by now made his way to a destination portal on the other side of the room. There were only 15 meters between the portals, hardly the kind of headline news I expected. But when Carlo opened the door of that destination portal and I caught a glimpse inside, everything changed. He reached in and removed the object, then held it out. A perfectly square pane of orange glass. "But I thought that was the last pane we had," I said to Morgan, looking at the one next to her in the origin portal. She held my eyes. It was. I glanced between my two employees, the only two other people on the moon right now, and tried to figure out if they were playing some kind of prank on me. It wouldn't have been like them, and it wouldn't have been wise, but nothing else was making sense. "So you found another pane?" I asked, missing the answer even as it stared me in the eye. This time, Morgan slowly shook her head. "I didn't find the second pane," she replied, gulping again. "I made it." My eyes widened as the possibility dawned on me of what she might mean. It was a possibility rather than a realization, because even my mind was struggling to wrap itself around the thought that had just popped up. "Morgan, are you telling me?" And that was when she said it. Her introductory words about dissolution points and kinographic something or other went way over my head, but as soon as she got to the crux of the matter, I knew that wealth beyond imagination was finally at our fingertips. "As of 15 minutes ago, we can't just teleport matter," the remarkable woman revealed. "Mr. Lenny, we can replicate it." Chapter 3. 3 days ago, my most prized possession was a beautiful gold watch. I had it crafted as a special commission, the last timepiece ever created by Switzerland's most eminent watchmaker. Truly one of a kind. Or, to be more accurate, it was one of a kind. Today, I have one on each wrist. Ever since Morgan and Carlo accidentally landed on the magical recipe of control variables that can replicate objects placed in an origin portal rather than merely teleport them to a destination, we've been making physically identical copies of just about everything you could imagine. I was naturally interested in replicating valuable items like the watch and some rare rocks that our mining equipment has found deep under the lunar surface, as any regular person would be. Sue me. I'm a miner, a speculator, a businessman. The scientists in my midst, Morgan and Carlo, were more curious about finding the limitations of the replication technique they'd accidentally discovered. They didn't do any more experiments on the first night and wouldn't let me stay in the lab without them, which Morgan insisted was important while they talked about the potential implications of the replicator. Replicator. Until recently, I thought of it as a portal, or sometimes a teleporter, but I'll tell you this. Replicator has one hell of a nice ring to it. The morning after the big night, we began a structured series of experiments. Quite understandably, that completely took over the window of time I should have spent fixating on every detail of the journey I'm about to make to Earth, when I'll step out of a portal in the middle of a packed stadium just after talking to the crowd via a video link from this lunar lab. Right now, almost no one on Earth even knows we've mastered teleportation, let alone that we can transport a living person across such a vast distance. I'm not taking a leap of faith in doing this, though, because Carlo has already made the trip a few times in both directions. A pressure suit was enough to keep him safe without any of his body's more delicate components breaking like the countless panes of glass we've shattered in our tests. And even though Morgan thinks I could get away with something less conspicuous, I actually think the visual of me stepping out while looking like an old-school astronaut will add to the pizzazz. Pizzazz is important here, which is why I'm going for the big show don't tell revelation of a working destination portal, rather than a forgettable announcement. Is there a risk it won't pay off and something goes wrong to make us look like fools? Maybe, but it's a small risk for a worthy reward. People forget minor disappointments a lot quicker than they forget seeing other people materialize from thin air. So I know we could always win the world back around with a successful demonstration later, if there are any unforeseen technical hiccups this time. As for our replicator experiments, Morgan was absolutely insistent that we could never use our newfound power to make copies of any living things. Carlo and I wanted to test it on some plants at least, but she wasn't for compromising. You might be thinking, but Mr. Lenny, you're the boss. And you'd be right. But I need Morgan to make this all run smoothly, and I can understand her concerns. There will come a time for testing this out on living things, and indeed on ones far more sentient than a potted plant. But that time isn't now. With living things off the menu, Morgan began with items of various sizes and weights. We always used the same nearby portals as our origin and destination, and that meant we didn't need to keep adjusting any variables on the control system. Not even fragility had to be factored in now that we were replicating rather than transporting, and the magical recipe of control variables didn't change at all throughout our entire run of tests. To cut a long story short, absolutely everything we tried worked perfectly. If you picture an ancient British phone booth, the old red kind, you're not far away from picturing one of our portals. They're black rather than red, and they're certainly a lot bigger, but that shape is pretty close to what we're working with. Each portal has a series of fully adjustable shelves. Once we establish a link between our origin portal and the chosen destination portal, any adjustment we make to the shelving supports in the origin portal will automatically adjust in the destination too. That's useful because it ensures that whatever we send will have a suitable base to arrive on. For instance, panes of glass materialize on a flat horizontal base, whereas something tall will be on the floor, and for something wide, it makes sure every shelf is folded in. Everything that holds true on that front for teleportation is also true for replication, and the result of the process is pretty much identical too. The portals have extremely heavy doors made of solid, sturdy stuff, and no light gets in or out once they're closed. We have always had special cameras inside each portal during the teleportation process, but even at 60 frames per second, the footage always seems to be missing the precise moment when an origin portal becomes empty, and likewise when a destination portal ceases to be empty. That makes sense, given that the material is being transferred rather than disassembled and reassembled, and Morgan has told me that it's the same kind of thing when we're working with replication instead. With replication, the items are still being teleported to the destination portal, she said. But they're not being teleported from the origin portal. They arrive without leaving, in essence, and a camera inside the destination portal will almost certainly show the same kind of instant materialization we see in regular teleportation. As I've come to expect, Morgan was right. Our recordings showed exactly what she predicted. Carlo, for his part, is the only person who has experienced teleportation so far. I've picked his brain a few times ahead of my own journey today, and he's consistently told me that you don't feel anything. According to him, the first trip was so easy that he thought we were messing with him when we told him he'd actually teleported. He thought we had moved the portal to make him think he had traveled across the albeit small initial distance, and when we showed him the footage from each camera, he could hardly believe it. The nature of our next-gen night vision cameras allows them to work flawlessly in the pitch-dark portals, naturally, and I'll never forget how wide Carlo's mouth fell open when he gaped at the sight of himself, simultaneously disappearing from a portal on one side of our lab and reappearing in another. Thinking back to that, it's hard not to get giddy imagining the looks on 80,000 faces when I appear in my destination portal on Earth, smack bang in the middle of the stadium, during the climax of the big game's halftime show. I'll be chatting with the announcer and appearing on the big screen right before it happens, telling everyone what I'm about to do and getting ready to change the world when I do it. I can hardly wait. I don't have long left. We're down to minutes rather than hours. But admittedly, I'm way less focused on this than I would have been if our already incredible portal hadn't become a bona fide replicator. Sure, the teleportation demonstration will send our stock price skyrocketing and make me billions of dollars at the drop of a hat. But this replicator breakthrough kind of makes all of that moot, does it not? After all, in an hour we could turn my 2 priceless gold watches into 2,000 priceless gold watches. In an instant we could turn the biggest diamond in the world into one of a pair, and in another instant we could turn that pair into a quartet. Are you starting to see what I see? The others are too, and Morgan's extensive replication tests have only served to underline the potential. She was interested in things I wouldn't have considered, like how well gases retain their structure and whether atomic clocks show any signs of time dilation or batteries and other power sources are at all degraded. Fortunately, the answers to all of those questions were the ones we would have hoped for in the name of both simplicity and potential. My new watch isn't just a lump of chemically true gold. Its intricate mechanism works just as well as the originals. And don't get me wrong there either. I was a bag of nerves when I put my watch in the origin portal. The point is that I had nothing to worry about, and everything we've tested has worked so well that Carlo and I have posited, always out of Morgan's earshot, that living things probably would be fine. That could be useful in all kinds of situations, even if we restrict it to plants. You only have to think about food sources to see where I'm coming from there. Morgan did let us replicate an apple and a potato, apparently because she saw some value in studying how proteins were replicated. Her analysis revealed that the answer was perfectly, as you might expect by now, but she loudly vetoed Carlo's offer to taste it. I don't know if we'll ever publicly reveal our replicator breakthrough in the way we're about to reveal our teleportation breakthrough, Because the prime advantage of this technology is that no one else has access to it. It's almost like an arms race. If everyone has the ultimate device, no one has the ultimate device. My hunch at the moment is that this is the kind of breakthrough that has to be kept secret, not just kept secure. If anyone found out what we've discovered, they'd do whatever it takes to get their hands on it. Espionage, violence, you name it. What wouldn't our corporate enemies do? On a similar kind of theme, my watch experiment really got Morgan's noggin jogging about the potential importance of us being able to determine at some point whether something was an original or a replica. While Carlo and I were asleep last night, the third night of replicator tests and the last before my trip to Earth for the big reveal, she finally made a breakthrough on that, too. It's safe to say Laura Morgan is a breakthrough machine, and it's safe to say that's why she's my lead researcher. To be honest, this one is far less of a breakthrough in the scientific sense, but it's very useful in a practical one. It's actually not unlike the way other things on Earth are authenticated, like paintings or antique banknotes from the days of physical currency. She told Carlo and I to think of it as a harmless, penetrative, light-based watermark, with emphasis on the harmless, and it results from a short burst of intense light. I don't fully understand it, and to be honest, we could probably lose the word fully to be more accurate about that. But Morgan does, and in layman's terms, she told us that some of our special cameras can tell which items have been exposed to our special lights. Items in each portal are exposed to different kinds of light immediately after the replication process completes. And Morgan has assured us that this watermarking technique has been extensively trialed on Earth, by my own company's security division no less, and that no changes of any kind are made to the items other than the visual change seen through the lenses of our proprietary cameras. Morgan explained to me that under the special cameras, an original item would appear green, while a replica would appear red. It really was as simple as that, she said, and the setup was as infallible as it was untrickable. This came too late for my watches, but I know the original is the one on my left hand. I would never call it the real one because they're both real as real can be, but I think original is a fair word. The clock has ticked relentlessly onwards while I've been mentally preparing for the speech I'm about to deliver to a stunned audience on Earth, first from here and then from the ground. Meanwhile, Morgan and Carlo have been even more studiously making manual notes of every single control variable that's been in place on the origin portal to make sure they can return it to replicator mode later in the day, once my journey is over and I'm back here to focus again on the remarkable tool at our disposal. The computer systems record everything too, needless to say, but my employees wisely see some value in making their own detailed notes, just in case there's any data loss. Once they've done that, Morgan gets to the work of setting the origin portal's teleportation destination to the waiting portal on Earth. It would be pretty embarrassing if we only moved you across the room instead of into the stadium, Morgan quipped in a rare display of humor. She's the sharpest person I've ever met, but sharp is an appropriate word in more ways than one, and joviality has never been something you can expect from her. I laughed when she said it, but at the end of the day it was funny because it was true. The cringe would have been real, I'll tell you that. Are we good to go? I asked. Morgan nodded. I've set the location to our previous destination from before the recent tests, which is the destination portal on Earth that Carlo arrived in last week during those tests. I suppose we should revert the light marking settings too, just to make the portal's inner camera footage clearer for posterity's sake. Definitely, I agreed. Morgan motioned to Carlo and encouraged him to follow the basic instruction of hitting revert on the control panel, since she was by now helping me into my spacesuit. Revert, confirm, authorize, Carlos said, narrating his selections out loud as any good co-pilot would. Proceed? Proceed, Morgan confirmed without turning back to face him. Before I knew it, I was in the suit. I kept my helmet off ahead of the video chat I was about to have with the stadium announcer, and just in time I realized that we had some suspicious-looking stuff hanging around that could easily have snuck into the shot through my handheld camera. It was nothing damning, necessarily, but an eagle-eyed viewer might have spotted the odd number of batteries and the other duplicate items on a shelf near the room's origin portal. With the billions of eyeballs that would be on my demonstration, either live or when the news broke, and everyone rushed to their nearest screen to see for themselves, forensic scrutiny was absolutely guaranteed. Carlo hurried to move everything we asked him to, and with little over a minute to spare, I was ready for my big moment. This day will go down in history, and our tomorrow starts now. Chapter 4. I'm ready. Everything comes down to this, and if I'm one thing, I'm ready. Okay, I'm more than one thing. Now that the moment is imminent, I'm as nervous as I am excited, less for my own safety than for the success of the demonstration. This is going to work, but it has to work well. It has to be smooth, it has to be awe-inspiring, and it absolutely has to be taken seriously. I rarely do any kind of interviews or public appearances, and that's going to work in my favor. People know I'm not an attention seeker, so I think they're going to listen when I talk, even before they see what I do. It's safe to say the public at large doesn't have the best impression of me, largely due to the media's portrayal of me as a profit-driven prospector with little care for safety concerns and few foibles about predatory business practices. I'm not saying those things aren't true, I'm just saying the public knows about them because certain elements of the media work so hard to tell them. In any case, I'm a good public speaker, despite being an infrequent one, and I know that the stadium announcer is on my side. Beside, read payroll. And not out to trip me up or say anything that makes me look like a fool. Greetings from the moon, I begin, looking directly into the small camera in Carlo's hand. I pause as planned and wait for a signal from Morgan, who's watching a broadcast from Earth. When the signal has beamed down and back up, she sees me on the screen and raises a thumb. It's all go. From there, I run through my well-rehearsed introduction of what's about to happen. I state the halftime score and talk about the game, pretending I've watched by hitting a few of the talking points I came across in my brief glance at the online discussions. The point of this, rather obviously, is to make it clear that my current speech isn't some pre-recorded thing, to make it look like I'm on the moon when really I'm hiding in the destination portal. That portal is appearing only now, its arrival signaled by another hand gesture from Morgan, being wheeled to the edge of the field and onto the X mark that signals its correct position. I can only imagine what everyone down there on the ground is thinking, and I can only hope that Carlo's planned panning of the camera around the lab, and then to its only window, will convince people that I really am on the moon at the moment. At the end of the day, I reassure myself this demonstration is just a sizzle. Whether everyone buys it or not, the stake is the fact that our teleportation works and it's going to change the world. It's going to increase some of our bank balances too, but the replicator really does blow it out of the water on that front. In terms of being a technological innovation that'll have widespread effects for the people of Earth as a whole, though, our core teleportation breakthrough is sure to be the most consequential we've made. I reached the end of my speech right on cue, and I'm all out of minutes. All that remains between me and my first ever teleportation are a handful of seconds. Morgan gives me an okay sign when I glance over, and that means it's time to fasten up my helmet and step into the origin portal. My HUD confirms that the helmet is securely in place, at which point I pull the door tightly shut and wait for what's coming. Here we go, I say, too caught up in the moment to realize that no one is going to hear it since there are no live mics in here. The words echo around my mind in the face of an otherwise total silence, and it dawns on me, only then, how dark it really is. Within no more than a few seconds, I feel like I'm truly in a void, which in some regards I wonder if I might actually be for a brief instant when the teleportation gets underway. I can't hear anything, but I know the moment is coming. I also know what to expect, or at least think I do, thanks to Carlo. I'm looking forward to seeing the blinding lights of the big stadium without even feeling like I've moved. Someone is supposed to open the door of the destination portal when the crowd's countdown reaches 0, and for the sake of my sanity, I try to fight the silence and darkness with a countdown of my own. Believe me, You should never underestimate the disorienting effects of true silence and true darkness. I'm learning this only now, and a heads up might have helped. I start at 10. By the time I'm down to 6, a feeling creeps in that something should have happened by now. The transmission delay in each direction means they won't have gotten Morgan's signal for a little while, I tell myself. It works, and I'm back to my countdown without missing more than a second or two. Just as I reach 3 and start to think once more that something should be happening, it does. I didn't expect a quick flash of visible light from inside the portal, but that's the first thing that comes. That must be to improve the camera shots of my big moment, I figure. Given how often this is all going to be played and replayed on TV screens across the globe, it does make sense. But a moment later, from nowhere, I feel the ground shake beneath my feet. What the hell? I'm thrust sideways, and for one moment the silence is gone, conquered by the thud of my own head against the portal's inner wall. This most certainly does not make sense, and it most certainly should not be happening. I wonder if there's a commotion happening on the ground, or if they maybe put the destination portal ever so slightly off the center of the identified X mark. It's all very precise, Morgan has told me many times, so I guess it could be possible for there to have been some kind of teleportation-driven pull, taking me into the wall nearest the correct point in space. These thoughts are all coming and going within a second that feels like an hour, and they're quickly sent to the back of the queue once again when a much bigger impact sends me to the back of the portal. It's far too dark to see anything, and my disorienting collision with the sidewall actually has me uncertain of which way is forward and which way is back. But the thrust of this latest force has sent me backwards relative to whichever way I was facing when it arrived. Please, someone just open the damn door! When the door opens, I'll know which side is the front, and more importantly, I'll know that I'm okay. After the unexpected light flashes and then 2 unexpected physical jolts, I can't deny that an understandable thought has wormed its way into my mind. Something has gone wrong. It's probably minor, something to do with the precise positioning of the destination portal like I've been thinking, but I'm now worrying about how this is going to look for the audience. I feel fairly sure that a live demonstration of a shaky and painful-looking teleportation will be worse than no demonstration at all, setting us backwards in the public's mind rather than forward. This wouldn't be the case if we had just sprung the very notion of teleportation on them today, but the cat has been out of the bag in terms of the scientific possibility of this for quite a while now. What I'm doing by demonstrating a working portal and arriving instantly from the moon goes far beyond confirming a notion, though, and I am acutely aware of the need to look cool and collected as soon as the door opens. No camera feeds from inside either portal are being broadcast live, at Morgan's prudent suggestion, so I don't think anyone will know I've been tossed around if I can totally shake it off and act like nothing happened. My left shoulder feels like an elephant just sat on it, but I'm hopeful that's going to be a quickly disappearing pain, albeit a currently agonizing one resulting from the jolt of impact on a body that isn't exactly used to a great deal of physical exertion. In the silence, I can hear my heart. It's beating so fast, the sound of its racing thumps takes my attention from the shoulder pain. I do the old trick of using my fingers to rhythmically count to 10 while I counted the beats out loud, and the 17 I reach means I'm hitting 170 BPM. But wait, this also means it's been another 10 seconds, plus all these seconds thinking about it, and still no one has opened the door. Okay, I decide. I locked this door when it was time to leave, and I'm going to open it now that I'm here. The worst incident I can foresee coming from this change of plan is if I unceremoniously interrupt some other kind of introduction that the stadium team have planned without my say-so. But right now that feels like a risk I can take. I'll level with you. This whole deal is the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Carlo is either underselling the effects of teleportation to stop me from bailing out, which is a thought I hate him for right now but would thank him for in time if it ends up being the truth, or I've just gone through something Carlo didn't. Total silence and total darkness are even worse when you know there should be people breaking them. And that's another thing I've just learned. If it was hard to deal with when I first stepped into the portal, this is just flat out awful. The blinding lights of a stadium sound good to me right about now, and even some unexpected booing from a crowd of people who don't like me would be welcome. With a deep breath, I hold my arms outstretched in front of my chest and step forward. I don't know if I'll find the door or the back wall first, but either one will have me fumbling for an imminent escape within a second or two at most. I take a step forward and feel nothing. Damn, I must have been right against the wall, I think to myself. Another step. Still nothing. After this second step, I stop. Something is seriously wrong. 2 full-size paces and 2 outstretched arms is more than enough to cover the inner size of the portal, no matter how cavernous it might feel with no visual or auditory stimuli. Figuring that my steps are probably shorter than usual due to what are very understandable feelings of tentativeness, I exhale sharply and take another step. And another. Then 3 more. Oh my God. There's nothing there. Forget my shoulder. When reality dawns on me, it feels like an elephant is sitting on my sternum. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't even stand up. I crouch to the ground and ultimately fall to my knees. Crawling forward, I swipe my hands around in front of me like a blindfolded child playing pin the tail on the donkey. There's nothing. I'm not hitting the portal's wall because I'm not in the portal. Our demonstration didn't just go wrong, it went disastrously wrong. When my mind accepts the reality that I'm no longer in the controlled environment of a portal, but nor have I safely arrived on Earth, it at least kicks into gear and starts scanning my HUD for any possible useful information. How something went wrong is a question for later, once I'm safely back on the station. A voice tells me that thinking like this could be baselessly optimistic, but I try to shake it. Because without hope, what do we have? I've always liked that quote, but it's never really resonated with me like it's resonating now. Then again, I've never felt anything like this level of helplessness before. How I get back to the station is a much bigger and more pertinent question than what went wrong, at least for the moment. And all of a sudden, I'm wishing with every fiber of my being that Morgan hadn't recently succeeded in teleporting items from an origin portal to an open-air destination. All I know for sure is that I'm not in a portal, and, well, that's about it. I want to know what happened in the lab to make this go so wrong, but first of all, I need to get back there. Before that, though, I feel like there's an even bigger question that my mind doesn't even know how to start addressing. Just where in the blue hell am I? Chapter 5. I wish I had a light. Oh, God, how I wish I had a light. I also wish I'd paid a lot more attention over the last few days to Morgan's instructions about how to read and operate my helmet's HUD. We just had so much going on, what with the replicator discovery and everything it can make possible. I didn't have a lot of mental bandwidth to learn about something I thought I'd be looking at for all of 15 seconds. After all, I was supposed to be in and out of the portals, not to mention in and out of the helmet in almost no time. As it turns out, I am out of the portals, but not in the way anyone intended. I should be standing in a stadium right now, amazing the world with not just news but visual proof that our teleportation research has borne fruit. And as if I need it, this thought has given me another reason to be down. By bringing home the point that the demonstration has clearly failed, it's making me wonder whether the kind of hit the stock price will take is something we can recover from. Even if I find a way to call for help and Morgan can somehow find where I am, how could we ever explain our way out of this one without crushing all faith in the portal's safety before the technology even gets a fair shake? I catch myself pondering this. If I wasn't wearing the helmet, I would probably be slapping myself in the face to snap myself out of it. Stock prices? Public confidence in the tech? What the hell does any of that matter when I'm stranded in the middle of nowhere with no food, no water, and for all I know, only the suit's short emergency supply of oxygen to keep me going? A new thought hits me, with all the subtlety of an elephant on the sternum. Is this what it all got me? Is this where a lifetime of chasing ever greater profit margins has ultimately landed me? Maybe all of the replicator tests we've been doing did something to the portal calibration, I consider. Maybe Carlo was just as distracted as I was today and did something wrong when he was supposed to be following Morgan's basic instructions for setting up the journey. Carlo and Morgan. Carlo. Morgan. Like a pea in a punching balloon, yet another uncomfortable thought starts rattling in the answerless cavern that is my terrified mind. What if they meant this? What if the two of them want the replicator for themselves and they cut me out by way of an accident that's going to kill all positive earthly interest in the portal tech and leave them free to enrich themselves with the replicator? You're doing it again, I tell myself. You're letting thoughts about the money get in the way of everything else. As if they would do something like this. Carlo has been loyal for too many years to count, and Morgan has never been about the dollars. I instinctively reach my hands up to cover my face, but the gloves hit the helmet long before that's possible. At least this brings my attention back to the digital readings overlaid in my HUD, like augmented data on a car windscreen. I see a bunch of numbers, but I hardly know what any of them mean. There are symbols beside most of them, but again, I hardly know what any of those mean either. It crosses my mind that if this was an accident, I could be absolutely anywhere. Hell, maybe not just anywhere. The origin portal was supposed to send me through space to a designated spot on Earth, but that clearly hasn't come to pass. And now that I'm standing in a black void in the truest sense of the word, maybe it's time to start considering that we've done something really crazy, like accidentally breached some kind of dimensional barrier or even, I don't know, crossed some kind of timeline. The clock symbol is obvious enough, but the number beside it is even worse than I thought. Scrap that. It's much worse than I thought. By most estimates, I've been the richest man alive for several years, and by any measure, I was on course to entrenching myself in that position once the portal tech went mainstream and even before the replicator was factored in. Hundreds of billions of dollars were there to be claimed, and a lack of motivation to keep accumulating more and more is all that could ever have held me back from hitting the T word. $1 trillion, I muse. And there's a fat lot of good it could do me now. Because according to the reading, this godforsaken reading, I have 11 minutes of oxygen left. Chapter 6. I've heard of things going from bad to worse, but this is too much. I don't know where I am, and I'm rapidly running out of oxygen. Maybe because of how fast I've been breathing, I suppose, but that isn't even the latest twist in this nightmare journey. No, the latest twist, just as I was trying to center myself and get to grips with the HUD's wink-controlled menu system in a bid to determine the oxygen level outside of my suit, is the first of its kind. A sound. A few minutes ago, I thought there was nothing I wouldn't have given for a break in the oppressive silence. Now that the noise is here, though, I wish more than anything else that it would stop. It's a tap, 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 getting louder only to stop and pick up again. I truly have no idea what it is, and the last thing I want to do is jump to conclusions, but it sounds alive. As if I wasn't helpless and desolate already, who knows what could be coming to get me? Can it hear me? See me? Smell me? With no idea of where I am, I have even less idea as to what kind of creature's territory I might have just accidentally encroached into. What a thought. If this is when I wake up and the ghost of Christmas past asks if I've learned my lesson about putting profit over safety and literally everything else, tell him to save his breath. I know. Believe me, lesson learned. In just over 8 more minutes, I'll be the richest man in this cavernous graveyard, unless I find some way to communicate with the lab, or if the monster whose nest I'm sitting in gets here first and ends things even sooner. I'm at such a low ebb, part of me is thinking it would be better for that to happen now rather than for the minutes to tick by until suffocation kicks in. But if it comes to that, I'll throw my helmet off to gasp the air outside just in case it's breathable. I mean, really, at that point, what's the worst that can happen? I die instead of dying? Giving up just isn't happening, so I shake aside the thoughts of wishing the noisemaker would get me. That's easier than it would have been if the noise itself hadn't stopped shortly after it started. and I try to comfort myself with the idea that it was passing by without knowing I was here. The helmet makes it hard to tell, but I'm pretty sure the thing was above me. In the silence once more, I try to wink my way around the hut and ultimately see something that looks like a telephone icon. I focus both eyes on the position of that icon, and before I know it, the icon blinks to life. Holy hell, I might actually be getting somewhere. Alas, the hope lasts all of 2 seconds until the flashing green icon turns steady red. Wherever I am, I'm out of reach. I take a deep breath, right before thinking I really need to stop that habit if I want to conserve my ever-dwindling oxygen supply, and I keep cycling through the HUD. A blue icon made up of 3 horizontal lines I could best describe as squiggles is next to catch my eye, and the 3 green numbers next to it give me a modicum of justified hope for the first time in too long. 1, 0, 0. 100. Air quality, I wonder? Atmospheric suitability? Either way, surely it doesn't get better than 100. With 6 minutes remaining, I don't want to take my helmet off just yet, but I'll take positivity wherever I can find it. But just as things went from bad to worse a few minutes ago, here they're going from possibly less bad to worse all over again just as soon as I've gotten myself a little bit of hope with the potential discovery of breathable air outside my suit. It's back. The noise. And this time it's louder. The tap-tap-tapping seems twice as fast and somehow more deliberate. I quieten my breathing as much as possible and try to listen over my thumping heart. It's hard to hear anything at first, but I quickly realize that's purely because there's not much to hear. Only sound brings quiet into focus, as it turns out, and I'll be damned if this isn't the most welcome sound I could have possibly heard. A voice. Without even thinking, I hurriedly take off my helmet. Glad I paid attention to that part at least, and I call out at the top of my lungs, "Help!" I bellow. "Help! My name is Sebastian Lenny, and I have no supplies or no idea where I am. Please, if you can hear me, help me!" With no helmet, I can hear that the tapping definitely has been coming from overhead. I noticed that during the first few words of my desperate message, and I'm trying to take the fact that the tapping stopped then as a good sign. If the footsteps stopped, it's because whoever is up there heard me, I reason. And that means they're bound to try to. Like water in the desert, the light that suddenly comes before my tender eyes fills my heart with a joy unknown. I'm saved! Saved! As my eyes adjust, I take my hand away and look up. A face comes into focus. "Lenny?" It says. "Carlo, it's him!" The face, the voice, the feet that walked overhead, and the hand that opened the door, it all belongs to Carlo. Right now, I don't even care what went wrong, much less how it's going down on Earth. All that matters is that I've been here on my lunar station all along, somehow tossed into a concrete storage basement by a teleportation gone wrong. "Carlo," I say, tears welling in relief. "Thank God, can you drop me a ladder or something?" To say he looks shocked as he stares down at me would be an understatement. We share a silent look for a few seconds, and it comes to my mind that after the initial relief of finding me alive, he's probably shocked that I haven't asked what's happening on Earth, after the evidently botched attempt to send me there. "You shouldn't be here," my always loyal employee of too many years to count says. His voice is low and firm. "Huh?" I reply. "I know, Carlo, just give me something I can use to get out. Come on, man, no hard feelings about whatever went wrong." Still, he stares down at me with a weird and unreadable expression on his face. My heart sinks as I see his hands moving back towards the hatch he opened when I called. The hatch on my ceiling and his floor. "You shouldn't fucking be here, Lenny," Carlo grunts. And with his final word comes the thud of a hatch that crushes my spirit all over again. With more questions than ever and no way of getting out, I don't even bother to scream after him. Hello, darkness. Hello, silence. Goodbye, Carlo. Goodbye, life. Chapter 7. Was it minutes? Was it an hour? I don't know, but the sound of quick footsteps is enough to set my heart racing with hope all over again. Maybe it'll be Morgan this time, and maybe she'll be better equipped to deal with the shock of seeing me down here. Trying to put myself in her shoes, I'm thinking that I would probably think Carlo had gone crazy if he told me what he found in the basement storage room. In my shoes, I'm wondering what the hell got into Carlo's head when he locked me back in here and walked away. If it has only been minutes since he left, maybe this is him coming back with a ladder I need to get out? That would make sense. My eyes are blinded all over again when the hatch slides to the side, and when they readjust, I can see two figures. It's Carlo, all right, and it's Morgan, too. Jesus, she gasps. I'm okay, I insist. Rather than a fellow man waiting for help, Carlo is staring at me like I'm a cobra getting ready to pounce. I told you, he suitably hisses towards Morgan without breaking his gaze. Morgan positions her body over the hatch and slowly uses a long stick to lower a bag until it's within my reach. That footage is airing live from Earth, she says before I even open it to find the tablet computer inside. I waste no time in lifting the tablet and turning it around to see the screen. As soon as I do, my heart all but stops beating. It's a broadcast from a press area outside the stadium where I was supposed to arrive, right in the spot where I was supposed to give a detailed rundown of the teleportation technology I was supposed to demonstrate a little while earlier. All of these supposed tos, and more than anything else, I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to make of it. Because the reason my heart skipped way too many beats was one I don't want to wrap my head around. Right now, on Earth, I am giving that speech. You made it to the stadium as planned, Morgan says, calling down as soon as I looked up from the screen in search of some kind of explanation. Something went wrong inside the origin portal, but you reached the destination portal without any problem. Something went wrong? I ask. You mean... Solemnly, she nods. We replicated you, Mr. Lenny. We've been doing too much with the portals, changing too many variables, switching from open-air destinations to full replication, and thinking we could go back to regular teleportation from there. And the bottom line is that the system tried to replicate you at the same time as it was teleporting you the whole way to Earth, with no prior replication of a living thing ever having been conducted. It's a miracle you made it to Earth, but it's a tragedy you also ended up here. But I'm okay, I tell her. See, tragedy averted. Just get me out and we can do nothing, Carlo interrupts. Lenny, you made it to Earth. Teleportation works and the people are going crazy for it. But no one can know about replication, remember? That's the whole point. Our whole advantage would be gone, and anyway, you know we're legally sworn to avoid taking any actions or making any comments that could damage the public standing or stock price of Portal Core. Stock price, I boom, hardly believing my ears. Carlo, I'll die down here. For the love of all that's holy, there's more to life than a damn stock price. They look at each other before Morgan breaks a brief silence. The real Lenny would never say that, she says, apparently deciding just like that I'm the replica. Carlo nods in agreement. Never in a million years. Was there more to life than a stock price when I couldn't take the shuttle down for my dad's funeral last year? Come on, you know we had work to do that week, I contend. Morgan pipes up. Or was there more to life than a stock price when you told me yesterday that centrally licensing the replicator to mass-produce vaccines and expensive medicines would open us up to unacceptable risks of eroding our advantage by revealing that the tech exists at all, no matter how many lives it would save? I gulp. Guys, come on. At least get the camera and let me prove it. The watermarks will tell the story. You'll see I'll look green. That replica of me on Earth will look red. I'm telling you, please, I'm telling you. Just as it looks like Morgan might go along with this idea of determining which version of me is the replica. Something that makes my head spin just thinking about it. Carlos shoves his stupid nose in where it doesn't belong. It doesn't even matter, Lenny, he says. That one thinks he's the original just like you do, but the difference is that he doesn't know this accident happened. Morgan's eyes widen in realization, and her neck straightens in what looks far too much like agreement with Carlo's point for my liking. A controversy like this could kill the company, she eventually says. Mr. Lenny, Carlo is right. It matters less which physical manifestation of you was standing in that origin portal when the teleportation began, and it matters more which physical manifestation of you now poses a threat to the company's ongoing profitability. We will have to fully assess what went wrong here and take a few steps back in our testing before rolling out the teleportation technology. But the apparent success of your teleportation to Earth is already boosting the company's value. While we iron everything out and even beyond that, nothing can get in the way of that. I don't know what to say. I can't believe what I'm hearing. And as Carlo succinctly stated, Morgan goes on, at your own behest, we are explicitly prohibited from doing or saying anything that could injure Portal Core's public image or stock value. Unfortunately, raising you from that storage basement would be a contradiction of our contracts. Contracts you signed with me, I yell, disbelieving my own ears. And I'm telling you to ignore them. What if I fire you right now and hire you back on 10 times your current pay with a new contract that doesn't mention those clauses? Let's go for that. Hell, 100 times your current pay. Come on, guys, we're on the same team. Carlo shakes his head intensely. The other one of you will be back here before much longer, and if he sees you, there could be some serious psychological trauma, just when we all need a clear head more than ever. The company can't afford that any more than we could afford the bad press if this ever got out, so pretending we never found you down here is the least damaging course of action we can follow. We'll keep the other you miles away from this area when he gets back from Earth, so don't get excited by any ideas of calling out to get his attention. Or, your attention. I feel a knot in my stomach, in a much more literal sense than I ever have before. I could double over with the pain Carlo's words have just inflicted, and within another second or two I do find myself crouching to the floor. But we're not monsters, Carlo says. My eyes widen. I look up. Is there hope yet? There's a suicide pill in the bag, he goes on, answering that one with a decisive no. He's gone before I can reply, not that I was going to, and that leaves me face to face with only Laura Morgan, the true architect of fully functioning teleportation and a once idealistic young woman who has evidently been hardened by too long in my company. This day will go down in history, Mr. Lenny, Morgan says, getting ready to close the hatch one last time. And believe me, you've more than played your part. Back once more in the silent darkness, I fumbled for the bag while considering the riches that are so sure to be coming the way of my two once loyal underlings and my own godforsaken replica. And as I come to terms with the fact that today is about to go down as my last, I can only hope they think it was all worth it. Because I can promise you this. I sure as hell don't. Thank you for listening to Replica, written by Craig A. Falconer, narrated by Alex Freeman. Text and production copyright 2021 by Craig Falconer. All rights reserved.